I recorded for 40 minutes almost. And I would say 3/4 of it is not usable.
Oh, okay.
I feel uncreative when I'm by myself. Like, even if you were here,
I get it. I complete you. I get it.
I mean, honestly,
No,
I don't want to.
I get it. Yin and yang. I get it.
You're gonna fucking turn this into something.
I get it. I get it. Albert and Costello. I get it.
Isn't it Abbott?
Huh?
Isn't it Abbott and Costello?
See, that's where you're wrong.
It's Albert.
That's what you need me for. It's Prince Albert and Costello.
In a can.
You'll never get anywhere. Not without me. Right? We go together like lamb and tuna fish.
Debbie Radio.
Bobby Beamer.
You serious?
Here's to episode 2 of the Two Critical Podcast, starring Mitch Hallock.
Slancha.
What's going on, Mitch? How are you?
Good. Bored out of my fucking mind, you know.
Well, that's why we started this, so we can be bored together.
Yeah, no, that's why Ed Dollister from IndieCast and I do our show every 2 weeks, because he was on lockdown. I was on lockdown. There was like nothing to do.
Right.
We're like, let's just talk to each other.
What a concept.
And, hello, Rob. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. You in Massachusetts as well?
I'm in New Hampshire. I'm from Mass, though.
Oh, all right. There you go.
So we got most of New England covered here.
Yeah. I got 3 out of 6. That's a pretty good ratio.
We're all right. Yeah. We invited a guy from Delaware, but he died.
Hi, I'm in Delaware.
Seriously?
No, he became president.
Come on, man.
The 13 colonies. How are the numbers there in New Hampshire?
Very good.
Yeah,
my kids go back to school Monday for the first time since last March.
Are you kidding me? Really?
Yep.
They weren't doing the hybrid thing?
They've been doing hybrid, but they go to the school on Monday for the first time.
Oh, yeah, because here they do 2 days in class, 1 day off, and then 2 days at home with the virtual.
We've been only from home. Monday is our first hybrid day, and it's still going to be, I think, 3 days a week.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so my wife went from having 3 kids in school all the time to 3 kids at home.
Oh, I know. I thank God my boys were all college and grown up. I don't know how we would have survived working from home with 2 little kids. I don't know how you guys do it, but
it's crazy.
God bless you. Yeah.
Drugs.
You take drugs, Danny?
Every day.
Good.
Yeah. Do you think they're learning as much as they would have? Or
absolutely not. No.
Reading is good. Can we start the story now?
Not a shot. I mean, every single kid that's going through this is getting 65% of what
Let me tell you, I said years from now, never use a doctor or a lawyer who graduated in the year 2020.
Wait a minute. This is future Mitch.
You gotta give a span of a couple years before they catch up.
Yeah, you need a little bit of a buffer.
What are they gonna call the bell curve? How they grade after COVID, right? The COVID curve.
Yeah, right.
Right.
right? Something like that.
Oh, they're one of the COVID kids. He's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
He's
one of the
fine.
no, they call them vid kids.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
the vid kids. Yeah, there you go.
Trademark
No.
that. Get that right now. Make some money
Right.
on that.
The good thing is we probably killed all the acid rain projects for science class, right? It'll just all be COVID shit from now on.
It's all done. It's all ball bearings.
It's all ball bearings nowadays.
Is that-
Everything's ball bearings.
Yeah. Is that your Corporal Agarn hat?
This is
my Larry Ford?
my RJ McCready hat.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was Agarn for a minute. I'm like, oh my God, it's an F Troop callback.
So you're the second person to say F Troop. Actually, the first person was a woman named Kim Wyman, who we
Is she
despise.
100 years old as well?
Wyman!
Larry's 99. He's still alive. So
God bless him. He's probably got his hat on right now.
he does. He goes to these shows. they prop him up, and he goes. I swear he's got that distant, faraway look in his eye, like
Right.
he's not really here right now.
No, he was out that outpost much too long.
Oh yes. Oh yes. So
All right, Mitch. So let's get this thing started.
is this legit? You got an opening and all that, or you just go?
Oh, what are you kidding me? We got intros. We got original music. We got the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
I mean, we're giving you 4.5 of it, but we got the whole 9 yards.
It's 3D. It's
Yeah.
in 3D.
It's in VistaVision. It's in Smell-O-Vision. So stand back.
Here, let me just kill the germs that are on the screen.
Attaboy.
There you go.
Perfect. We're all clean. I sang happy birthday while you were doing that, so I'm fine. So let's twice. This is your origin story,
My origin story.
right? Because every superhero has one.
Every journey starts with a first step, and
Yep. So we all know that you're the king of the nerds, and
so they say. Yeah.
that's true.
Sure. Do you think
Okay.
somebody wants to actually hear all that? But
Well, I mean, we know for a fact there's like 14 people online
Wow.
that want to see it, and coincidentally, they're all in Connecticut. What got you started in comics? Because I know everybody that chooses whatever their life is going to be, especially in entertainment and film or TV or anything,
yeah.
they know they can track back that moment when they said, "I knew I was destined to do this." When did that happen for you, and how did you get started?
When the teacher says you have no chance of getting any real job. So no, along those lines, when I was a kid, I could draw. I mean, that was one of the only things I knew how to do from like the first day. In fact, I remember getting crayons and writing on our paneled wall, because this was the 70s, the Flintstones. And I remember using an orange crayon so it would pop up on the brown wood panel. And I remember drawing all the Flintstone characters, and my father was furious. I was proud of it. It was like my first mural. So when he came home, I was like, "Dad, look what I drew, the Flintstones." And there was Fred and Barney and all that. And he was not a happy camper that day. So I knew there was something there. But honestly, speaking of my dad, he was in the Marine Corps, and he had all the comics. He was born in 36. So he grew up at the perfect time for the Golden Age comics.
Right.
And he had everything. I mean, he had Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all of them when they were brand new, Captain America. And he collected them. He had the foresight to collect them. And my mom, who lived around the corner, she would read his comics too. They would come back and they'd trade with my aunts and uncles and stuff. But my dad always had the best comics because my grandfather worked at a pharmacy. So he would steal comics at the end of the day when everybody would go home. He'd just grab a handful of 10-cent comics and bring home books for my dad. So my dad always had the best books. But when my dad went to the Marines, here's where the story gets common. The books were downstairs.
No.
Just sitting there in boxes because he saved them. And when he comes back from the Marine Corps, he asked my grandmother, "Where's my books?" And of course she says, "Those things, I threw them out." Or the cat had kittens on them. That's the story I heard. And I never understood what that meant. Like, why did the cat's afterbirth ruin all the comics? Maybe the first layer or so got soaked with placenta,
I
feline
mean,
placenta.
yeah, it's probably a good
Yeah,
guess. First 6-7
yeah.
pages.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
I don't know why she dumped them all, but she did. And then I remember being a kid, and in the same pharmacy that my grandfather had worked at, my dad was going in there years later to go buy a pack of smokes, because our dads could do that back then, and leave us alone in the car, in the front seat, with no safety belt, nobody watching us, no child locks. I think they left the keys running in the car, so they.
What's a car seat?
Somebody would steal the car with the kid in it. That was a child babysitting. But I remember watching him go inside to get a pack of smokes, and it's like a Norman Rockwell painting, because there's that yellowish glow from the lights overhead, and he's at the register.
Yeah.
And he's buying his cigarettes, and there's a spinner rack to the left. I could picture it in my mind. And he's spinning the books around, and I see him pull 2 books out, and he pays the guy, and he comes in the car and he gives them to me, and he says, "Hey, keep these. Don't let anybody ever throw them out on you." And it was a Batman comic, and it was a Shadow comic from DC Comics. And of course, I have to do what my dad tells me. So the OCD started on that day.
Right. Good.
Never throw it away.
Yeah.
It belongs in a museum type of thing.
Yes.
And I remember my dad had a blue suitcase that he used in the Marine Corps, and it had stickers of all the places he was stationed at. And I would keep my comics in this blue suitcase, and I would drag a suitcase around with me to my cousin's house, to my friend's house, like a traveling salesman as a kid. And Paris Island, Haiti, Dominican Republic, all these places he was stationed. But I'd pop open the latches, and inside were all my comics. That was like the gold, like when they open the ark and the light comes out. That's what it was like.
Never seen it.
Oh, never heard of it.
No.
Oh, well, it's like Pulp Fiction.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah, Tarantino's the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and so anyway, so I had that thing. So then I married the comics and the drawing ability, going off to Catholic school, and they're yelling at me because I'm not taking anything seriously. I'm not doing my studies, because I'm just in the back of the room drawing comics on my, those composition books. Remember the black and white?
Yeah.
That was a perfectly bound comic, in my mind. So
Exactly.
I would draw page after page of those things, and I'd swap them with my friend Al Pilato, and he would have his comic strip called Mr. Smith Comics. It was very minimalistic. He didn't bother with fancy names or anything, and he couldn't draw for. Can you swear on this?
Yeah, fucking A, you can.
Oh, okay, he couldn't draw for shit. He would draw stick figures, but the stories were funny.
Right.
And I could draw very well, but my stories were kind of like a little watered down, and I knew it too. So I would do my great artwork with bad stories. It was kind of like a Todd McFarlane type of thing. It's good artwork, but a lousy story. So I would give him those, and then he'd give them. And then one day we said, "Why don't we do it together?" He wrote scripts and gave them to me, and I'm over there drawing the thing. And mind you, we're like 8 or 9 years old, so this is kind of warped. That you should be doing something better with your life.
Right.
Some serious Captain Underpants tones coming through here.
Oh yeah. And the Incredible Hulk was on back then. This is in the 70s, and we'd go and watch Lou Ferrigno and all that stuff, and $6 Million Man. So we did the first crossovers.
Right.
We'd come back and you'd do a story where $6 Million Man meets the Hulk, and Wonder Woman shows up, and there's your character. So we were doing all that, universe swapping out. And then it just, high school, did the art stuff, went to college, artist. And then I tell my dad I want to go to art school and become a comic book artist. And you think he'd be psyched. He'd be like, "Oh, you found something to do." But he was more realistic. He's like, "What are you, crazy? What if you fall and break your hand? You're not going to have anything. You won't know anything. You got to go learn something. You can't draw funny books for a living."
Mitch, run around with his goddamn handstands.
Yeah.
Your hands. You're a high risk for breaking your hands, Mitch.
Comics.
Those hands.
Yeah, you'll never make money. And then the teachers too, like, "You better stop with the funny books. You'll never make money doing anything with funny books."
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I went and learned to do marketing and advertising and graphic design, which was boring as shit.
Yep.
And I got a job out of school doing catalog work, like remember mail order? Remember that?
Yep.
When you open your mailbox and be 1,000 catalogs in
Yep.
there? So I would work for a company called USI that sold exciting office supply products. And the guy got fired, the art director, and I was the assistant art director. I was 23 years old, and I just got out of college, and I was waiting for them to hire somebody else. And the owner comes in the room. He's like, "You know how to do all this stuff?" I was like, "Yeah." "You know how to work that Mickey Mac computer thing?" I'm like, "Yeah." You know how to take pictures? Yeah. Okay, you got the job. Mind you, I was getting paid $18,000 a year, and the other guy was getting paid like $60,000 for the
Right.
job. So it's like,
Yeah, it seems perfect.
but it's one of those things. You're stupid and you're young, and you think, well, I got to do my grunt work to get my, under the belt, the experience, and then they'll give me money.
Right.
Yeah. So the guy goes, if you could do the job, I'll raise your salary up to 30. And I'm like, $30,000. Wow. And I remember I told him I wanted to do comic books, make the catalogs illustrated. And he goes, you know how to do that? I go, of course I do. And you, being in movies, you know that answer. Whenever they ask if you know how to do
say
something,
no.
Of course I know how.
You'll figure it out.
Damn right.
I had no idea how they made a comic book. I mean, I knew how to draw and all that. So there's no internet in 1989, 90. There's no Google. So I knew comic books. So I opened up the Marvel comic that was in my desk drawer, and their phone number was there. And I called to speak to somebody in the art department, the production department, to say, how do you actually make a comic book? Because I read them, but I don't know how to make them,
Right.
And my favorite artist of all time is John Romita Sr. He's the guy that drew Spider-Man in the 70s and the 60s. And, he's big deal. So I tell the receptionist my story, how I got to learn how to do a comic book because I told them I could do it and I don't know how. And she goes, all right, hold on. I'll put you through to somebody. And next thing you know, it's like, hello, John Romita. I'm like,
Oh, get out of here.
God. Yeah.
You serious?
So he picked up the phone and I'm like freaking out because I'm fanboying out, but meanwhile, I need to learn this real quick because I got a job to do. And I go, oh my God, you're my favorite artist. I want to grow up to be you. This is why I got into art and blah, 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 blah. But forget that shit. I got to find out how you do this. He's like, what? And I tell him my story. And I said, Mr. Romita, you got to help me. I got to get this job. I can't lose this job. He's like, all right, get a pen and paper out and I'll help you out. So about 45, 50 minutes, I had him on speakerphone. He walked me through the entire process about how to pencil it, how to ink it, how to color it, how to do all this stuff to make it look like a comic book. And he's like, good luck to you, son. I hope you keep the job and I hope they keep paying you. And I was just amazed. So I did the whole book and I made it look like a comic, and then sales started going up because it didn't look like all the other shitty catalogs that people were getting in the mail. I mean, they were holding on to it.
Yeah.
And they started getting letters from people. There was one minister down south who said the imagery was demonic and satanic.
Naturally.
Because I was drawing like werewolves and like, I can't remember what he was objecting to. I think there was like
the burning crosses. He had a hard time with that one.
I drew a werewolf on the cover. Like
werewolf?
A guy.
Their wolf. Their house.
Yes.
Why are you talking that way?
I thought you wanted to. You should say if I'm easy.
Yeah. Flabruca.
So, can you imagine if Tom called Paramount and said, I need to know how to make a movie? And they go, hold on, I got Spielberg on line 3.
That's what it was like. Yeah, man.
That's insane.
Fuck you. Let's call Frank Marshall right now.
You won't do it. You won't do it. Let's call Bobby Beamer.
You want to do some blow?
No, I don't.
Oh, let's not do that. Can we get the crane shot again or whatever that was?
Drone. It's a drone
shot. He's on, I think, tonight or tomorrow. Cutlass has got that new Clarice show.
Oh, don't worry.
Oh, he's on Clarice?
To him online.
He's playing
an FBI agent?
The Ray Liotta played. Remember the guy who's got his
Yes.
brain eaten out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some
I can't
fava
remember
beans and a nice Chianti.
Gross.
Paul Krenler, I think the character's name was. But anyway, Mike Cutlitz is on the new Silence of the Lambs movie, or TV show. So anyway, where were we? Yeah, so I got the gig. I did the comic. Sales went up. They said, don't lose this guy. And, on and on and on. And then what happens? I get a call to go work at Marvel Comics. My dream job. So I got in the train. I was living in Branford, Connecticut. It was like a 2-hour train ride. I go to Marvel. They offer me a job. Now, mind you, I was making about $35,000 at this point. This is 1993. They offer me $23,000.
Okay.
To go work at Marvel Comics.
Okay.
And I'm like, because I was thinking about it, because you're thinking, well, it's just like you. If you got into Paramount Pictures, like, we'll let you in if you want to clean up at night. You're like, I'm in show business. So
exactly. Yeah.
This is my way in. And I had just gotten married and I'm like, I don't know. And my dad, I called him up. He's like, look, you're in a small company now. You're the art director. You're the king of the hill. You go to New York, you're going to be like, number 127. They're not going to know who the frig you are or give a shit who they are. So you're going to be nobody. You're going to start out on the bottom rung. So I called the guy back up. I counter offered. I said, can you give me at least 30,000? And the guy goes, are you kidding me? There's a line of people around the block that would kill to be in your spot right now, that with an opportunity to come work here, and you're counter offering us. I go, yeah, what the hell? They must have rich parents, because you got to understand, you got to pay New York City tax.
Sure.
New York, and I was living in Connecticut. Plus, you had to commute. That's 23,000 is like $5 a week. Once you're done. So I turned him down, and the guy called me back 2 weeks later. Said, "You're making a huge mistake." I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? So I didn't get the job. I didn't take the job. But it's not bad, because then Marvel goes into bankruptcy not too soon after that, and they laid off like about 500 people. My dad's like, you would have been one of the first ones out the door if you had taken that job.
First one in, or last one in,
last
first one
hired,
out.
first fired. Yeah.
Yep.
So meanwhile, I'm still like, I want to get into the comics, and DC Comics calls. I got an opportunity to go there. They paid $40,000 because they had Warner Brothers money,
That's right. Yeah.
So I go there, and I was going to a Marvel stockholder meeting that day because I had stock before they crashed and went bankrupt. And Stan Lee's there. And it wasn't like Stan Lee when he was still alive, like you had to wait in line and pay $100. You could just walk up to the guy. And he was just sitting there at the stockholders in the front room. They bring him into like glad hand and shake hands with everybody, like, oh, come and meet the legend. And these guys were just in it for money. They didn't give a crap who Stan Lee was, but I was like, ooh. So I go and talk to him. And I said, oh, I got a job interview over at DC Comics. He's like, oh, the distinguished competition, huh? Yeah. And he's like, well, good luck. I said, well, they're offering more money. I was going to work here at Marvel, but they don't pay a lot. And the guy's name was Ron Perlman, who was this big Wall Street guy who's like, famous for getting companies and just crushing them and selling them off and all that. And he had taken over Marvel. And I said to Stan Lee, why don't you guys pay more? He goes, don't ask me. I don't run the company. Go ask that guy. And I don't think he was being serious, but I'm kind of dumb that way. I thought he was being serious. So I said, okay. So I go right up to Ron Perlman, and he's there with all these other muckety mucks with their suits and ties on. And I go, hey, buddy. He's like,
you cheapskate.
Yeah, can I help you? He's like, yeah, I got an offer across the street over at DC Comics. And how come they pay more than your people pay? And he goes, well, we're very competitive, and I'm sure our rates are equivalent. I said, no, they ain't, because they offered me a gig here. And it was only $23,000. They're offering me $40,000. And that guy over there said I should come and talk to you. And they all look at Stanley, and his eyes are like, I didn't say anything. So they go, well, I don't know. We'll have to look into this, and I don't know what exactly you're talking about. Security, fucking
bullshit, right?
Nutcase, yeah. So I go back to Stan Lee, and he is like amazed. So he gets his comic book. I actually have it over there. And he writes, good luck at the distinguished competition, Stan Lee, because he was more amazed that I went up and asked the head of the company why they weren't paying as much as the competition.
Right.
So I go to DC Comics, and I'm high as a kite on this. Oh my God, Stan Lee wrote on my comic, man, good luck. So I go in the receptionist, and I go, I'm here for my job interview. Look what I got. It's Spider-Man comic signed by Stan Lee. She goes, that's not our book. That's the other people. I go, I know, but who cares? Look, it's Stan Lee. He wrote on my book. So she's like, oh, well, don't bring that up in the interview, because they're not going to be happy that you're like, yay,
right.
Yay, I'm going to work for the Yankees, and I got a Red Sox shirt on, So
Sounds right.
I did. The guy I interviewed with unfortunately passed away.
That was my follow-up question. Did you ever get to meet the guy?
The guy that which one?
The guy that talked you through the whole process of creating.
Oh, John Romita?
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. That's years later, like 2-3 years ago. He lives in Long Island, and my friend was going to meet him to get some books signed for CGC. And he couldn't drive. He's like, hey, do you want to give me a ride to Long Island today? I'm like, not really. Why? He goes, I got to go to John Romita Sr. Oh, my God. So
my schedule's clear. It's suddenly clear.
And there's Virginia Romita, his wife. And I tell the story. She was the one that answered the phone.
Stop.
She was the receptionist?
She was the assistant to the production manager. That was his wife.
Assistant to the production manager.
Not the assistant production manager. Yeah.
When I called up to say I needed help, she's the one that took the call because she didn't know what to do. So she asked her husband to help me out. So that's the reason why I got to talk to him, because the wife hooked it up. And I said, oh my God, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had that job, and I wouldn't have made all this money, and blah, blah, blah. And thank you for my career. And He was like, yeah, whatever, kid. I don't know what you're talking about. Security. So
Get him out of here.
no, he was great. And then John Romita Jr. comes over, who's his son, who's also a comic book artist. And it's one of those surreal moments because they have a beautiful little house, like some from the All in the Family, where they got the 2 chairs and everything. It's like a little tiny Long Island house with a little fireplace and the little statues and the Italian saints up on the corner and the crucifix on the wall. It's like my grandmother's house, So they're all just hanging around, they're all just sitting at the couch and, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? I don't know. I want to go to the diner. And I'm like, oh my God, there's the guy that made Spider-Man and his son, the guy that made the Punisher. And they're all sitting around, and I'm there. Why? So anyway, long story short, that's the comic book thing. So to answer your question, I've been loving the comics since the day I was born and always trying to get into it. And never really got into drawing it for a living, so just did a lot of catalog work, Micro Warehouse and Microsoft and HP and all the boring computer crap that we all use. That was
so Tom, I got to jump in here. One of the questions I had to ask you, because I think we got roughly close to 3 generations here, not quite full generations between us, but I think we're close to about 10 years apart between the 3 of us, between me and Tom and you. Is the difference between when you were a kid. So, I've seen your stuff online, King of the Nerds, right?
Yeah. That's the radio station coined that.
Right. So I guess my question is, when you were growing up, kids that were into comics, those were the dorks, the nerds, the science kids, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wet Hot American Summer, those are the kids doing the space projects with William H. Macy.
Uh-huh.
But nowadays it's totally different. I mean, the kids that read the actual physical comics may be still more that way, but the mainstream, I'm a perfect example. So I read comics as a kid, but it wasn't a huge thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the Marvel and DC film franchises and TV series, I'm obsessed with.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
To the point that I wanted to do a podcast with Tom specifically so I could talk about it more. Sports is probably my specialty. Yeah. But I'm so interested in this stuff that when we started talking about this, it just turned into kind of like we talked about earlier. We were talking on the phone every day during COVID and we talked for 45 minutes. And finally we were like, if we recorded this,
somebody would watch it.
We got a show.
Yeah.
And I look at the 3 different generations and I think back to even when I was a kid, the people that were very big into comic books were the nerds and the dorks.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case at all anymore. Do you look at it, is it almost like you have the real comic book fans that read the comics and then there's the TV and movie fans? Like, is it almost like a separate entity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can go watch the Avengers or any of the movies, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and I could call out all the references to storylines from the comics where you might go see it and just see it as the movie, and that's the universe it's in. But there's like a whole separate level that if you're a comic book nerd and you're steeped in all this history, oh, that guy's this guy and that name there, and they're referring to this and that. You don't need to know all that. That's really the beauty of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My wife, who doesn't know comics or could care less, she could watch one of those movies and be entertained without realizing Thanos is from the planet Titan and this was here and that's where the high evolutionary, and there's all this backstory that it's like watching baseball. Like when I was a kid, I used to be into all baseball statistics. Like you'd get the world history of baseball and you'd know like Honus Wagner did this and Ty Cobb did that.
Harmon Killebrew.
You didn't need to know that to go watch the Yankee game that afternoon, but it just helped if you knew the history of the thing, but it didn't take away from your enjoyment of it all. It's just that's what being a geek and a nerd is. I think it's like Tom could tell you, when we go to see a movie, I would watch a movie once, and if I liked it, I'd go back and watch it again. I've seen Raiders 1,000 times. I still find things in that movie that I haven't seen the other 999 times. It'll be on. I go, oh my God, I never noticed that the guy came in from that angle, or there's a shadow of a boom mic over there. But I'm still enjoying the movie like everybody else, but I'm looking at different things and the music cues and the lighting effects.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because that's kind of how the name came to be. Because I mean, the 2 of us, I think if you don't know us well enough, might think we hate everything.
Yeah.
Because We do. We watch shows and movies, and we'll text and call each other and be like, "Did you see this?" And Tom's bigger about it than I am, and he'll say, "This guy held this gun the wrong way, or that holster doesn't work for that gun." And I'm sitting here, I'm like, "I don't have military training, Tommy. I didn't pick up on that."
I remember Tom being upset with the silencer effect on the Walking Dead when Carl killed himself because it sounded like a mouse fart. It was like. And he's like, "That's the worst silencer. I got it." And he starts going on about it. And I'm like, nobody knows what the hell you're talking about.
Walking Dead. Walking Dead is the #1 example.
Oh, so please. We don't want to get into that.
He got me into it. I had never watched it.
Yeah.
And I loved it at the beginning. And I got to say, I don't really like it so much anymore. But him and I, we watch every Sunday.
But that's a comic book, though. Did you read the comics?
I did not.
See,
so I didn't know anything about the Whisperers or Negan or, what's going to come next. And it's funny because Tom and I would text about it. It's almost like we'd hate watch it. And it's weird because I don't hate the show. I love the show, but I hate the show too. I love how good it was. I hate that it's not as good anymore.
Right.
But even back to the Marvel thing, like I'm noticing for me, WandaVision more than any series so far or movie, I'm finding out more. And nowadays, there's 15 different videos describing what happened in the episode and where it went. And they're awesome, especially for people like me that didn't read all the comics.
Oh, I watched that stuff too, because I'm like, I didn't catch that,
I didn't know who Mephisto was before WandaVision. I didn't know. I'm excited. I hope he's coming in. But I was curious about how that worked with the guys that were kind of the old school comic guys. I mean, I'm sure you love the massive success they have and what it, breeds for the whole industry. But I wondered if it kind of was almost like, people like me, and it's okay. I don't take offense to it. Like, I'm not like a real comic fan. I'm just like a digital comic fan.
Well, there was something that happened when you were around a teenager. I mean, obviously you started getting into girls or other stuff. And that's where the break came, because all these guys, and somebody told me this years ago, and I don't know how true it was. There's two different theories about comic book fans. One, somebody told me once, it was very urban. He said, that's an urban thing. That's not something that's in the rural suburbs. Comics are like a city thing, which I was like, that's kind of full of shit.
Yeah, I didn't think that's true.
That. No, but this guy was trying to be more, nose turned up to looking down at the comics and stuff, that it was children's literature. And I'm like, there's a lot going on in these stories that are not Richie Rich or Casper the Friendly Ghost stuff,
Let's talk more about the socioeconomic impact of comics.
Oh, yeah. So seriously. So that's what my first reaction was, because I grew up in New Haven, which is kind of like a little urban area here in Connecticut, like a little New York City. And you just were exposed to more things, cultures, religions, races, that type of thing. So that's just where it was. So when I would read a Marvel comic, like it all took place in New York, it seemed like the neighborhood that I was in. So I just, latched onto Marvel comics, not DC comics. If we really want to get into it, DC, I've always been telling people, it's like, those are gods. Okay. Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, they're like on a different level. They're not human. But Marvel, all of Marvel's heroes are kind of scumbags in a way. And I mean that in a good way, because they turn out to be selfish, egotistical assholes. And then something happens to them
and changes it
and changes them. And then they realize that they could actually help people at the end. And they're reluctant to do it. I mean, you got your Iron Mans, your Peter Parkers, all that stuff. And suddenly they become a hero. And I think that's why they're so successful.
Everyone but Steve Rogers.
But he was Mr. Perfect to begin with. But he was a weakling to begin with. I mean, he had it in his heart, but he just physically couldn't do it until they transformed him. But so there was that part about the comics, that they were just more of an urban thing. And I didn't understand that. And the other thing was, they were meant for kids. So like I said, in high school, there was all these kids that would read books with me, that we went to grammar school. And we were like sophomore year, you're about 14 years old. This kid, Danny Seals, he was a great jock. He was on the football team. He was on the track team. He was like my best buddy. We would read every comic there was. I remember one day he's sitting telling me, he's like, "You still read comics?" And I'm like, "Yeah, don't you?" He's like, "No, man, that's baby stuff." And I'm like, "Really, Danny?" And he's like, "Yeah, come on, man. Don't you want to go get a girl or something?" I go, "Well, yeah, but don't you want to read the latest X-Men book or the latest Spider-Man?" He's like, "Nah, man, that's baby shit. You can't read that stuff. They'll think you got problems, man."
That's so Danny.
Classic Danny.
Classic Danny.
I just remember I was floored by that. And it's true. Like, of all the kids that I went to grammar school that read comics, by the end of high school, I think I was maybe me and one other kid out of like 20 kids that we had known. In senior year, there was only 2 of us left. And you're right, comics were not in fashion. They were just like, you don't read comic books. Even though in the 80s, you had The Watchmen coming out, you had The Dark Knight Returns coming out by Frank Miller. These are like these classic stories that I was getting when they were coming out every week at the newsstand that revolutionized the comic book industry and made the way the world look at them differently, you know. But it was not the majority of the fans out there. So it's a weird world we live in now, because all the guys that like stayed with it, like me and my friends that did, we were not surprised to see how successful these movies are, because we knew these were good stories.
The stories are amazing.
They were illustrated, but it was like storyboarding, and Tom knows about that because you could see a storyboard.
Oh, Tom, you've worked on stuff?
And but it's a good movie just by looking at storyboards. You know, you could see the action. Like you look at Spielberg framing the action for the truck chase. It's like a cartoon, but that's going to be exciting just based on the graphics and the angles and stuff like that. So that, I mean, to me, all the stuff that's happening right now with comics and the Endgame and Infinity War, I could have told you 30 years ago this shit would have been a good story in the big screen.
They just didn't have the CGI and the
They didn't have it at all.
Off.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Really,
because I was full disclosure, I was born in 85.
Jesus Christ.
So
yeah, so there's a 2-year gap. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time I got to middle school, right before high school area, I remember I had some comic books, and I was more into sports cards, but that was the places that had comics. Because you go to places, and I'd go to, buy and trade sports cards, and there'd always be comics there. And I'd go through them. And again, even as someone that wasn't into them, I think like anyone that like read the comics knew like there's a story here that could really, and that's why, obviously the Keaton Batmans that started it off with the successful movies. There was movies before that, but no.
Oh yeah. Superman was probably the only one that was decent, the 78 one. And even that was kind of boring, I always thought, but people love it. I thought it was kind of slow.
But it's amazing what it's turned into now with, I mean, the multiple networks that have the shows and the movies. It's just one of those things that, back then it was like, oh, you're a nerd if you like comics. And now I don't know anyone that if I say, oh, what'd you think of Avengers Endgame? They'd go, oh, I didn't see it. It's like,
I like people that don't realize certain things that they're watching are comics. The woman that lived up the street from me, she never read a comic in her life, but she was watching Walking Dead. And she was all into it. Yeah. And I said, that's a comic. What? How could that be a comic? So she's thinking Archie and Jughead or something, And it's funny you said the 90s. That was the worst time for comics. So it's a good thing you didn't get into them back then, because
I was busy with baseball cards.
Yeah,
I have so many Roger Clemens cards. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, man, because I mean, they were horrible back in the 90s. That's when I stopped reading, not as many as I did, but I would still keep my mainstays. But a lot of the books I used to read, I dropped off because they were so horrible back then.
I'm ready to get into them now so that I can see what's coming in the future. Because now I read all these people online that know who Nightmare and Mephisto and Angela Harkness. And I mean, I know who Angela Harkness is because of Emergency Awesome's YouTube videos. I don't know because I'm a learned person when it comes to the
You mentioned digital comics. That's a good way to do it. I mean, I'm more of a tactile guy. I like having the books in my hand.
I'd rather read anything in hand. That's just me.
Yeah. But not to do a commercial for Marvel omnibuses, but you could go buy those, hardcover collections, and you can get like the entire 30 issues in one big ass book. There, it weighs about 8 pounds to read the damn thing, but that's a good way to do it. So.
I might have to do that.
Yeah. Let me know which books you want to know about. I'll tell you which ones to get. You can even get the paperback ones that are a little lighter to hold when you go to read them, and they're a little cheaper too. But they're like, I mean, I practically own all the friggin' single issues of these things, but I just like having them on my bookcase because it makes it look more legit.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a collectible too, right? I mean, how many people have that?
Yeah, they do short runs on these things, and then people go for the aftermarket. It's like, oh my God, $300 or $400 for.
Yeah, and you never want to get rid of anything that you think is valuable, like a Batman tumbler or anything like that.
We know Mitch can't throw anything away. We know that.
No, you want to know what I was doing all day today? You mentioned baseball cards. Okay, X-Men were trading cards. I have them here. My buddy,
I saw you posting these on Twitter.
My buddy calls me up. He says, "Do you still have your trading cards?" I go, "Yeah, why?" He goes, an unopened box of X-Men trading cards is going for $780. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I cleaned my garage like last July, and I found a box still shrink wrapped of X-Men trading cards I never opened. I bought them for like $35 in 1991. I'm all day I spent in that garage today looking through every friggin' bin trying to find a goddamn thing that's the size of, I don't know, a small box, okay? I can't find it. I'm still looking. Before we talked, I was already in the back closet here near the furnace looking in there for it. I'll start looking after we're done tonight. It's like $700. It's like, I don't want the damn things. I forgot I even had them, but now it's like a quest. I have to find that thing to get my eBay gold,
Yeah. Oh, that's
so I made buy more junk.
I made the Tumblr comment because I might have done a little bit of viewing some podcasts you've been on before when Tom told me we were having you on, and I saw a video about your wife throwing away your Batman tumbler.
Oh my God. You had to bring that up. She's upstairs now, but we don't talk about that. It's still too soon.
I'm sure she's a saint.
I gotta get me one of those.
Man. I could remember it like it was right over here, buddy. It was right here. My kids were playing their video games, and there was the tumbler. And she said, what is this? And we said, oh, it's the tumbler. And that didn't make any sense. So later on that day, I'm like, hey, boys, where's the tumbler? And they're still playing video games. They're like, it's right. But I don't know. Where is it? And we're all looking on the ground, and we're looking in the garage for it. I'm like, where the hell's the remote control? Where is it? And I go upstairs. She goes, you mean that big army Humvee thing? I go, no. That wasn't a Humvee. That was the Bat tumbler from Batman Begins. Where is it? She was like, threw it. It's in the trash. I went to the recycle. I threw it in the dumpster. And it still haunts me, dude. Right over there, I found the instruction books for the remote control stuff the other day. And it's like, why? And then I went to look on eBay, of course, and it was like $300 or $400. I'm like, well, I ain't buying that again for that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. People that just don't know. My parents bought a house on a lake when I was younger, and they were knocking it down to build a new house. And my stepfather, I show up. I rode my bike from our current house to the new job site, and they'd had a yard sale for all the old stuff inside. The original owner, they had a bunch of Playboys in the plastic, brand new. He sold that whole collection. But he had boxes of trading cards. And he's like, oh, I sold them. And I said, oh, what'd you get for him? He's like, $200. I'm like, how many were there? He was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. I said, what were the cards? He's like, I don't know. It was Joe Namath, Willie Mays. I'm like,
oh, you got to be kidding me. Really?
I'm like, you sold them for $200? He's like, yeah. I'm like, one of those cards might have been worth $5,000. Like, what are you doing? But he's, a carpenter who builds houses. He doesn't trade cards or no comic stuff.
My
when
wife
you don't know
she doesn't collect anything, dude. Maybe shoes, but that's it. She has no.
That's mine too. They get along.
There's nothing in that head that says save that, And like I said, my dad was in the Marines, and when we moved in 1978, I remember him saying, we can't take a lot of stuff. Whatever you could fit in a shoebox.
Or a blue suitcase.
In a blue suitcase. And
with a bunch of stickers on it.
That's it. That's all I took. I took a shoebox full of my Star Wars action figures, my Kenner action figures, the 13-inch, 12-inch G.I. Joe stuff, trash.
Yep.
Amigos, trash. The $6 Million Man toys, trash.
What's that $6 million man? I mean, that's probably worth how much money now?
Oh, we don't want to. I don't look at it because I cry if I do. But they're all worth hundreds of dollars each, And I had all the Star Trek figures and Planet of the Apes, all that stuff, and we couldn't take it with us, so I just threw it all out. I only got to keep the comics because I think he knew what happened to him. So he's like, okay, don't throw out the boys' comics because that's.
I mean, how do you think Tom feels? He filmed Indiana Jones 4 7 years before Crystal Skull came out.
Yeah, I know.
We're going to pause right now to take a quick break. Be back after this. This episode of the Too Critical Podcast is brought to you by Chris's Clippers. Chris's Clippers, when you absolutely positively have to have someone cut your hedges who has a 4-year college degree. Chris's Clippers. Call us today. If not, go fuck yourself.
You want to talk about, well, that's the thing. You want to talk about secret origins? You want to get into comic book conventions now?
Oh my God.
That's a money thing. You don't know what the fuck is going to happen. So Reed Pop is the one that runs New York Comic Con. They run
So how did you when did you figure it out? When did you figure out the equation when you said, these guys are doing it like this, I know I can do it better?
Well,
when did you figure that out?
That's what I was going to tell you. So anyway, that job I told you I got to draw the catalog that made it look like a comic book.
USI, yeah.
USI, thank you. They took me on trade shows. I had never been on an airplane till I was 24 years old because we were poor. We had no money. We drove places. We never flew anywhere. I never went to Disney World and any of that stuff. So my 24th birthday, I'm on a jet plane going to Las Vegas, Nevada to do a convention because they would do conventions. And the guy said, I'm going to teach you how to be a salesperson. I go, no, I'm an art guy. He goes, dude, fuck that art shit. I can get 20 guys, a dime a dozen that can draw. Okay. I'm going to teach you to
P.S.
sell.
This is the Mitch I really enjoy right now. I like this Mitch right here.
This is the realistic one. And this, I'm going to tell you, not to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
This is in my opinion, of course, which is better than most, why there's a problem. Because look, I went to school, I went to art school, I was a graphic designer, but I would sit in the back of the classroom, and when they say, come up with 4 designs for this art project, dude, the ideas fall out of my head like dandruff, okay? I was banging them out. I'd see these other kids, the stoner kid, the introvert, the ones that kid, they're over there struggling to come up with one friggin' idea.
Right.
And I got 30.
Yeah.
And I would sell ideas. I would sell roughs in the back of the room for $1 each to get beer money.
Mitch, this sounds like our conversations. Like when Tom and I talk on the phone, he goes, do you know how good of an idea that is?
Oh,
and I go, it doesn't matter because I own an office furniture company. I'm not going to do anything with it.
Here's the deal, man. Like I said, we didn't have much money growing up, and my dad was in the Marine Corps. So he said, basically, you got to make do with what you got. Okay. It's on you. Don't sit there and wait for somebody to come and save your ass. They ain't coming. Wow. Don't ever wait for somebody else.
Nobody but a Marine would know that better.
There you go. It's like, don't depend on the guy next to you to help you, because when it comes down and there's bullets flying, it's your ass and fuck everybody else. Don't. You could salute and you can sing as many songs and go to any movie you want. It all looks good on paper, but in the real deal, you're on your own, bitch.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. Yeah. Okay. So I was always self-sufficient that way. I was like, I'm not a team player, and I don't mean to seem negative like that. I would go to work and they go, there's no I in team. I go, but there's an A in asshole, and you're one of them. So I would never really be part of the group. I just didn't like to. I never joined up anything. I was like the Han Solo in me. He's like, fuck this. Give me my money and I'm going home.
Don't get cocky, kid.
Yeah. So I would sell ideas. And then I remember the teacher goes, stop the whole classroom when he found out. He's like, excuse me, is anyone going to Mr. Hallock's School of Ideas back there? We are not here to make him money. You have to come up with your own ideas. And if he's got 30 ideas, then he can keep his 30. So I'm like, hey, man, whatever, shut me down. I don't care. I just sold them out in the hallway. I would just go out in the hallway and they go, dude, I need 2 more comp ideas. I go, here you go. Here.
Pretty sure Mitch has got a hang of the marketing thing already.
Yeah.
So this back then. And I remember in the you do critiques when you were in an art class at the end of a project, you'd put it up on a wall and they'd all sit around and they go, oh, I like it. Why do you like it? Oh, I like the way he used the design. I'm like, fuck this. I could care less. I was just there to get the grade and get out of there. I did not want to sit there and hold your hand and sing Kumbaya. I wanted to get out in the real world and make some money.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but dude, when you grow up poor, you don't want to be poor. You want to make money and you want to buy shit. And the only way you're going to do that is if you can earn stuff. You don't want to sit there and worry about someone's feelings. So
fuck Tony Robbins. I'm ready to subscribe to Mitch's book
So
club.
I remember her coming to her. I remember we had to do a class called technical illustration where you would draw charts and graphs and all. This is in the 80s. And computers were just starting. Okay.
Right.
But I knew they weren't going away. It's not like a fad. And I said, why are we learning this crap? Because we'd have to go by hand and do shaded areas and little pie charts and graphs. I go, they're making computer graphic software that can do this in a heartbeat. Why are we wasting our fucking time learning this shit? Because it's not going to, you're never going to have a job in this. So when it came time to do the critique, there comes mine. The teacher comes to mind. She stops the class. She doesn't critique my project. She goes, you know what, folks? There's some people in life that think they know everything. and you can't teach a man who knows everything. And that's what we have right here with this particular and she didn't talk about my artwork or the design or whatever like that.
Right.
And I'm in the back of the room and everybody turned to look at me and I'm sitting there like this. And I'm like, you finished now? Yeah. I go, because can I say something? She goes, go, please do. I go, everything you just told these people is going to be worthless in about 2 years from now. So we've wasted 6 months learning how to do this stuff by hand, and it's going to be worth crap. So you go ahead and critique the little nice design that Bobby did over there, because in 3 years, that's going to be lying in a bird cage because it's shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you know, so anyway, go back to this job. Guy said the same thing, basically what I always thought. Artwork's great, but if you can't sell it and pay the bills and pay the groceries, doesn't make crap. They don't give a shit if you're going to be in a museum 100 years from now and people are going to sit there and ogle about the beauty of the human spirit. You got to pay bills, boy. So I'm out there in Vegas. He's teaching me how to sell stuff. I went to Vegas, Chicago, New Orleans, San Diego, San Francisco. In 1 year, I was on a plane every month at another trade show. And I learned not only how to sell and make a nice little ad, but I learned how to make people buy that. Okay. Because he said to me, you can make a beautiful catalog with 3-color art or 4-color art and 3D with metallic inks. But if you don't know how to sell that, it's all worthless. He said, I could make a brown paper bag with a magic marker. And if I could sell the right thing, I'll sell fucking 5 million of them. And your little pretty art piece will be in the trash tomorrow. And
You can sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves.
there you go. Once you understand that it's not about what it is, the product, it's about how you make people feel and how do you make people sell. This comic book stuff you're talking about, yeah, the special effects are a lot to do with it. But the Marvel folks, they understand like what people want and they keep giving it to them. It's like a soap opera type thing. Those movies are like big TV shows, dude. As much as they're on a big screen, it's like watching a weekly Sopranos or whatever. One episode goes into the next episode, and that's why they're successful, dude.
It's
Shakespearean. My life is
Yeah.
far too involved with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the TV series.
Yeah.
It is far too important to me than it should be. I have a
It's,
real
it's,
job.
it's finally something that gives you what you've been looking for, though.
Well, again, I'm let down by a lot of things. That's how Tom and I found. We've been friends for a long time, but we really realized that we both hate everything.
Yeah.
Even the things that we love, we find.
Dude, I'm critical about what the people wear in the local news. My wife can't stand it. I go, did he know he was going to be on TV today? She's like, why? I go, why doesn't he have a goddamn tie on? Why is
Again,
he
Tom's famous line.
And by the way, they're dressed by professionals.
I know that.
And
it says at the end of the show, the wardrobe provided by so-and-so. And the guy shows up with like this. Hey, buddy, it's
I have a feeling that Mitch subscribes to the theory that just because someone is in the profession that they're in doesn't mean they're qualified to be in that particular profession. Right?
No, they knew the right person.
Listen,
I could give you a stack of people that I've met in my life that shouldn't be where they were, and I'm like, "Are you serious, dude?"
So, but Mitch, I want you to understand, because I know when you see stuff online and stuff like that, and when you read things, there's no context to what people say or what people do. I live my life objectively, okay? And believe me, I watch other people's short films all day long, and film festivals and things like that, and entries that people do in shorts. If I see something that's great, I will message people and tell them that's fantastic. I like what you did, because there's always something that someone else can do or create, and you can not only appreciate, but you can learn from what they're doing as well. And you start to root for people like that. However, if something is shit, especially if it's on a professional level where people are supposed to be professionals and paid and make a lot of fucking money, and it comes out looking like something that I would have done on a long weekend with friends, it's a different story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hate when I go to see a movie and it sucks, the story, and my friend starts telling me, well, here's what the story would have been. I go, no. There's guys that get paid fucking millions of dollars to write what you just saw on that screen. That's what they thought was good enough to give to you. Okay, don't tell me like, oh no, this is what it really, or this is a comic book that's tied into it that explains what happened. No. And all those deleted scenes.
Yeah.
Dude, if it's not on the screen when I pay my $12 to see it,
It doesn't
that's
count.
the movie. That's
Yeah.
the real deal. I don't give a shit about 4 hours of extra footage that they're going to put in the Justice League movie.
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
Whatever. You know what? You give me 30 hours, I'll tell you the greatest story since sliced bread. Okay.
Right. Yep.
But that's not what I paid my fucking money to sit through for 2 hours. The shitty movie that they put out a couple years ago was the Justice League movie. There's no do-overs.
Yeah, you can't retcon that shit.
All right. We tried to keep this on the tracks. Tom and I talked about what
There's
we were
no
going to talk to you
tracks
about.
here, buddy.
No,
we're going
we
down
talked.
the road.
Where's my Tumblr? Where's my goddamn Tumblr?
We tried. Where the fuck is Busy Bee? We tried to keep this on the rails, but now that he said this, I have to open the floodgates a little bit. Tom knows one of the biggest things for me is the DC versus Marvel debate, and what so many people
about it here. If you want a slugfest.
But what everybody confuses is because I'm constantly critiquing DC online.
Yeah,
and everybody goes, "You're a DC hater." No. Batman is my favorite. Batman's my favorite comic
Batman's
hero.
really a Marvel hero, but that's another story.
I know, but Batman is my favorite superhero.
I know, but he could fit in the Marvel universe tomorrow.
Well, yeah, because
like
he's
that
actually
flawed guy.
because he's actually good.
Yeah.
But I truly believe, and Tom and I know we've talked about this. Oh my God, he's probably sick of hearing me say it. DC could have done what they did in the right way and introduced the characters over time and put in the work and made people care about the characters. But they looked at what Marvel did
and they
they said,
one movie.
They said, we want what they have in Avengers, maybe not even Age of Ultron. They want what they had in Avengers Endgame or Infinity War.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to introduce Cyborg, Flash, Wonder Woman, all these people. Here you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Care about it, like it. Here it is. And no one cared.
Dude,
and
how do you like to be me? I sit in the movie with Jerry Ordway, the guy who worked at DC, who wrote or worked on the Death of Superman, all that stuff. And we're watching the Superman Batman movie. Remember that one?
Oh,
and there's Jerry next to me. There's Jerry right next to me. DC paid his bills for years. Okay. I read his comic books growing up and he's sitting next to me and I'm like,
oh no.
Ben Affleck loved Batman and chose that he didn't want to be Batman anymore.
No, he became the Michelin Man. That was the worst Batman I ever saw. How fat?
I mean, George Clooney, Affleck.
Okay, whatever. Clooney.
Yeah.
You know what?
Hold on. I have to ask. I wrote down
Clooney was a good Bruce Wayne.
Clooney didn't drink it away.
I wrote down questions that I wanted to ask Mitch.
How bloated did Ben Affleck look in that movie, man?
Look, you know what? He
looked like Chris Farley after a weekend at Key West.
Look, right. If they made a deal with him to be Batman. They said you can go and direct all your artsy fartsy bullshit, right? Live by Night and The Town and Argo, right?
Yeah, that was a good movie. Yeah.
It was because
he was objective.
He was on the right track. He was on the right track. Okay, you can go do all that stuff. But we want you to be Batman. We want you. So you're going to get the acclaim, but we also want you to be the guy that's going to anchor these superhero projects. He did it, but he pissed it away because he can't control himself. He's a gambling addict.
But it's not just him though. It's DC in general. I mean, they're all over the map.
I understand that. But good managers know how to get good talent and get people to
show up and do their job when they have to do their job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right.
You can't hire a guy like that and not expect horrible baggage.
So this brings. I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask Mitch before we ended, and Batman was one.
Oh, we never got into the con thing, but that's another story.
Oh, we're getting into that. Don't worry. Tom can edit like crazy.
It's working.
I was just sitting there going, I don't know where we left off, but because you're right, we went off the rails into DC versus Marvel land, and we could stay there for a month, man.
One of the great things about Tom and his editing software.
Go ahead, I'm listening. One of the great things about Tom, isolate that clip. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's how tall he is.
Soundbite.
It's how tall he is. But we can edit this however we want. So I had a couple questions for Mitch that I have to ask Tom. You can sprinkle these in wherever you want. One of which, just because we were on the topic.
Yeah.
Best Batman.
Cinematic movies?
Yes. Yeah.
I gotta say Michael Keaton.
See, I say Bale, but I respect your decision. It's
Bale.
It's Bale and Keaton 1, 2, right? I mean, Kilmer,
The
Clooney.
thing that kills it for Bale, he would have been it, but that third movie that's not a good movie, dude.
It's not as good as The Dark Knight for sure, but I
No,
look at
and he's not Batman. It's not really his fault because it was the way the character was written. Batman's not going to go join the Lonely Hearts Club because his girlfriend died, and he's going to give up being Batman for what 8 years because she died. I was like, wait, what? No,
yeah.
come
So
on, man.
for me, I was always The Dark Knight was the best one.
Yeah.
Batman Begins was second. Dark
Yeah.
Knight Rises. I love all three for different reasons. But
I
similar
agree with that order. Yeah.
But similar to what you were saying, that's why I hated The Last Jedi, because they took Batman and made him something that, and again, in my selfish opinion, I didn't think he was.
Don't ever mention The Last Jedi with me.
I love you so much, Mitch. I was afraid to bring up The Last Jedi.
No, I hate that movie.
Oh,
We don't even.
I found my spirit animal.
Guys,
Dude,
seriously, what are we doing? We'll drive halfway to Connecticut. We'll get a shitload of Coke, right? We'll just sit around.
Bobby Beamer. Debbie Radio.
Look, dude.
You want to do some blow?
No, I don't.
Listen, I saw Star Wars when it came. My mom picked me up after
1977.
School. She picked me up after school because we went to see a movie called Logan's Run months earlier.
Cannonball Run?
I don't care. Stop laughing.
There was a trailer. There was a trailer for a movie called Star Wars. And I thought it was Star Trek because this is 76 or so, you know? And I'm like, what is this movie? And they're like, this is happening right now in a galaxy far, far away. Ding, ding. And you're like, what is that? And there was no John Williams score. It was just really weird music going with it. And they showed like 3PO and they showed Chewbacca and the audience was laughing.
And you said, what the fuck is this?
What the hell was that? You know?
Yeah.
But I'm like, I want to see that when
I'm so jealous that you got to grow up with that.
Oh no. So I went there that day and after school and my mom fell asleep during the movie. Granted, she would work nights at the post office, so she was tired. But when it was over, she said that was the dumbest movie I ever saw. And she looks at me, I go, could I go see it again? She goes, what? And we went home and at the dinner table, I would not shut up about Star Wars. I was telling my dad, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy turned in and then blah, blah, and I went like that weekend and I saw it 13 times that summer. I was just nuts
oh my God.
Star Wars back then. So The Last Jedi comes out. Now, the reason why I'm the king of the nerds is because I'm on the radio here in New Haven. And I
know your top 10 lists.
The top 10 list now, yeah. So I'm at Springsteen on Broadway with my friend on that night in New York, and I had to drive to get back to Connecticut to get the midnight show of The Last Jedi and then be on the radio at 6 a.m, I think. So
I hope you eviscerated it.
Oh, it was insane, man.
Mitch, I kissed you. I might drive to Connecticut and kiss you.
Dude, I left Broadway, got in the car, drove like a fucking maniac, got here to Connecticut, dumped him off, got in the car, drove to the movie theater, had my ticket, sat there, lights go out, movie comes on. When it ended, I looked over at these complete strangers next to me. I don't know who they were from Adam, you know? And we're all looking at each other and we all go, what the fuck was that? I go, I don't know, man. I go, was Luke drinking some green milk out of a sea cow's tit?
I'm telling you.
What the hell was that? And then I go, how could they have a light speed chase? They could just jump into hyperspace and be in front of you. You can't run out of gas.
Spaceballs had better storytelling.
And when you run out of gas, your ship doesn't drift sideways.
Check, please.
It keeps going because there's no brakes in space.
How did you like the break where we got to look at Rose for a long time, though?
Dude, I don't know what happened in that movie. And then there's my boy Luke Skywalker, who don't. He's my guy, okay? And then he throws the lightsaber. That was the first inclination that this was a bad movie. I was like, what did he just do? He threw out 40 years of my fandom.
What the fuck?
Over his shoulder, and I was devastated. And then I hear all the people like, you don't understand storytelling. Ryan Johnson's trying to tell a real deal.
Ryan Johnson's a douchebag. No joke. I called Tom after I saw The Rise of Skywalker. I'm sorry.
That's another story. Okay.
I'm jumping. After I saw Force Awakens. After I saw Force Awakens. And Tom hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And Tom does not give a shit about spoilers. So Tom said to me, tell me about it.
I know.
Yeah, I said, listen, it was good. It was A New Hope.
It was a different version of A New Hope. Correct. Yeah,
but I will take it. I'll take it for what it was. I'll take it. And I believe, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull effect. It's been such a long time. I'll take whatever you give me.
No, I hated Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Different story.
Hey, they filmed
We'll
that in
get
New
into
Haven, man. So
Fucking ain't right.
that gets points.
Recently, as recent as today, Dave Portnoy from Barstool said New Haven, Connecticut is the pizza capital of the U.S.
Yeah,
Agree or
everybody knows
disagree?
that.
I don't know this, so I'll have to find out when I come to TERIFFICON once COVID is over.
9-2. 9-2.
If Danny Tanner shows up, I'm going to riot.
I'm not going to sit here and try to give you some hard sell on why you should like the podcast.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it, you pricks.
Do it.
I will.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna do it right now.
Bear with us. We're working on it.
I understood that reference.
That felt a lot better.
Stop! Okay, keep doing it.
The joyfulness is over.
What's rattling around that brain?
Ronald Reagan, the actor. I'm your Huckleberry.
Hey guys, that's going to do it on this episode of the Too Critical Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed it. Join us again next Friday when we will talk to Mitch Hallock again for part 2 of the Mitchapalooza, as it were. We talk all things Marvel and DC, our hatred of Star Wars, and where you can find the best pizza in Connecticut. And believe me, Mitch has a few opinions. We hope that you enjoyed the podcast. If you like it, tell your friends. If your friends like it, get some new friends. And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. Stay safe out there, everybody. Thanks for listening, and fins up.